A mother of many children was asked by a foreigner to clean the home of his late wife before selling it. When she opened the door, she was stunned. That morning, Jennifer couldn't sleep. She woke up almost at dawn and went to the kitchen so as not to wake the children. It wasn't that she was in a bad mood. On the contrary, Jennifer was filled with a joyful anticipation that something in her life was finally going to change. Raising 4 little ones on her own was no easy task. Laundry, cleaning, cooking. This was far from a complete list of what she had to do every day. For example, she needed to help Alfred with his homework, and with Albert and Layla, she had to practice a poem. Only Lucy was somewhat independent. She was grateful to have her own house. It had belonged to her late husband Steve. Old, of course, but no one was going to kick them out. If only she could get some repairs done, then they could live in peace. In fact, the old house had needed it for a long time. The roof leaked, the windows rattled in the wind, and the walls were covered with cracks. The morning light streaming through the kitchen curtains bathed Jennifer in a warm, pleasant flow. Outside, the street was humming with activity, but her small house still held the quiet of the early morning. It was always quiet there, especially at this time of day, until the children began their daily marathon of noise and chaos. Albert, Layla, Lucy, Alfred, get up. Time for school, Jennifer said, knocking on the door, trying to sound cheerful and lively. As usual, the children didn't respond immediately. Only Albert, the oldest at 10 years old, was already sitting up in bed and yawning sleepily. His twin brother Alfred was the same age, but Albert had woken up a few minutes earlier, so he considered himself the oldest. Try arguing with that kind of logic. The first one up gets the slippers. "Mom, can I eat after school?" he asked. "No, Albert, we're having a roll with butter and a soft-boiled egg for breakfast. And tea, of course." Jennifer was used to this morning ritual, feeling like a general on the battlefield where her children were the soldiers. Though not all of them were her biological children. The twins Steve and Jennifer had adopted from an orphanage after doctors mistakenly diagnosed her with infertility. All the tests were done, all the procedures were completed. The doctors just shrugged. They advised not to waste time and to adopt a child. Steve and Jennifer did exactly as the Marriage and Family Center specialists had advised. But when Jennifer became pregnant with Layla, it was too late to reverse the situation. For everyone, it seemed like a miracle and a sign of some kind of grace. Ballmans loved children and were united in this belief. No matter how many there were, they were all theirs. All beloved and cherished. So Jennifer and Steve did not stop there and had another daughter, Lucy. Such was their paired happiness, 2 boys and 2 girls. Pure happiness. Of course, each of the kids had their own character and habits, so it was quite hard to get bored with them. When it came to house cleaning, 8-year-old Layla would immediately start complaining about a headache. 7-year-old Lucy always woke up earlier than the others, demanding porridge, and it had to be with milk or butter. Alfred was the most finicky of all. "Mom, I want to go on the swing after school." "Mom, I want cookies." "Mom, I want to go play soccer with my friends." Jennifer sighed sadly. She loved her children, but sometimes she felt like she was just a robot programmed to meet her little ones' needs. After breakfast, she would gather the kids for school. Even though Albert was the oldest, he always managed to forget something, a notebook or a pen. Layla liked to play forgetful and would hide the house keys on purpose. Lucy would cry because she forgot her favorite stuffed bear. And Alfred, as usual, would try to sneak out of the house to play with the neighborhood boys. Finally, when the children were at school, Jennifer could breathe a sigh of relief. She sat at the table, holding a cup of slightly warm coffee. She was 34, but fine lines under her eyes already highlighted her recent sorrows. A year ago, her world had collapsed. A tragic accident took Steve's life as he hurried home from another trip in his big rig. As if on cue, the rain drizzled down, mourning the unfortunate driver. Jennifer's heart literally ached that day. It felt like it would tear apart from the inside. And it wasn't for nothing. A woman's heart can't be deceived. It feels everything and never makes mistakes. The fault of a drunk driver had left her alone with 4 little ones. Jennifer was terrified that there was nothing she could do to change it. There was no rewinding time, no saving her husband. She still remembered too well the day when Albert, not yet understanding his father's death, came to her in the kitchen. "Mom, has Dad come back from his trip?" Jennifer sighed sadly, trying to hold back tears as she pulled her son close. "Dad has gone to a faraway country and will be there for a long time. Can I write him a letter?" Albert asked, tears welling up in his eyes. She stroked her son's head and kissed his cheek. "Of course, you can write him everything you want, and I'll send your letter." "Mom, will we keep living in this house?" Alfred, who had just entered, asked, still not understanding the serious changes in their lives. "Of course, we will," she replied. "It's our home." Alfred smiled. "Can I ask Dad to bring me a remote-controlled car?" Jennifer nodded. "Yes, you and Albert can write him about your wish in the letter." Happy with the answer, the boys ran off to their room, and Jennifer remained at the table, staring into her empty cup that smelled of soothing balm. What should she do next? How could she stay in this dilapidated house that needed repairs? Pushing away the sad memories, Jennifer picked up an old newspaper lying on the table and skimmed through it. Among other things, it had an ad for a cleaning lady on call. The position was already filled, but there were still plenty of options online where such information could be found. Jennifer's fingers involuntarily gripped the edge of the newspaper. This might be the solution to her problem. A cleaning lady on call, a housewife for hire. Well, that sounds promising. At that moment, hope began to blossom inside her. Of course, Jennifer didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to fight for her happiness until the end. Jennifer got up from the table and went to the window. The sun had risen and painted the sky in bright colors, but her heart still felt uneasy. "I will do everything I can for the children, for Steve," in his memory, she whispered aloud and began her usual tasks, cooking, cleaning, and washing. Jennifer was not one to do things in a rush and thought over the information she had gathered throughout the rest of the day. The day flew by in endless chores and hustle. Only in the evening, when the children were asleep, did she sit down at her old computer and typed "cleaning lady on call" into the search bar. The screen immediately filled with numerous options. With the tip of her tongue from concentration, Jennifer patiently reviewed the listings. She found the right option within 5 minutes. Here, perfect. Cleanland Cleaning Company. The website provided a phone number and contact address. That's great. I'll call them tomorrow and find out, Jennifer decided, turning off the computer and heading to the children's room. There, she hugged each child in turn and kissed them on the cheek. "Good night, little angels," Jennifer whispered and quietly left the room. The next day started as bustling as the previous one, but now she felt much more confident. She knew she was taking a step forward into a new life. Gathering her courage, Jennifer made the call. "Hello, I'd like to inquire about the cleaning lady position," she said quietly. "Hello," responded a pleasant female voice. "Yes, that's right. We do have available positions. You can come to our office around 10 o'clock. "All right, I'll definitely be there," Jennifer said, and after hanging up, she felt an incredible surge of energy. That same day, after sending the children off to school, she went to the Cleanland office. She was dressed simply but neatly, as always in her everyday life. At the office, she was greeted by a beautiful woman in a smart suit. "Hello. You must be Jennifer? You were the one who submitted the application?" the stranger asked with a smile. "Good afternoon." "Yes, that was me," Jennifer replied modestly and sat in the chair opposite. "I'm Betty, the department head and your direct supervisor," the lady began. "Nice to meet you," Jennifer said. A minute later, Betty opened a folder and explained all the details and nuances of the on-call cleaning job. "You'll need to clean apartments and houses for clients who contact us. We provide our employees with all the necessary supplies and equipment. And how much do you pay? Jennifer asked timidly. The pay depends on the volume of work, but on average, it will be as stated in the ad, the supervisor answered. Okay, I agree, Jennifer said, and, after signing the documents, received instructions for the job. We're glad to have you join our team. Good luck. Wait for our call and be ready to start, Betty said, escorting her to the door. As Jennifer left the office, she felt a surge of strength and energy. Finally, she had found a job where she could earn money. Oh, what a relief! She returned home feeling inspired and positive. As she started preparing lunch, her thoughts were still on the job. Now I'll finally be able to buy everything the children need, she thought, and I'll also pay for the house repairs. Soon, the children came home from school, bursting into the living room with their usual cheerful noise. Deciding to share the latest news, Jennifer immediately announced it to them. Mom, are you really going to clean other people's houses? Layla asked, astonished. Yes, that's right, sweetie, Jennifer replied. Wow, will you be cleaning real castles? Albert asked. The children laughed together. Mom smiled. Well, not quite, dear. I'll be cleaning regular apartments. Maybe some houses. Can I help you with the cleaning? Alfred asked. She shook her head. No, I'll manage on my own. Just focus on studying well so you can find a good job and start a family. The children immediately grew quiet and scattered around the house. The next day, Jennifer went on her first assignment, but an hour before that, she received a call from Angelina introducing herself as a Cleanland client. In a detailed, unhurried conversation, the client explained that she was 78 and lived alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. I would like you to come and help me tidy up, and I would be very grateful, said Angelina Boyer. Jennifer gladly agreed. Finally, she felt needed. When Jennifer arrived at the apartment, she saw that the rooms were quite clean and cozy, but there were many books on the table and magazines scattered on the floor. I really love to read, said Angelina Boyer, noticing Jennifer's inspection. Sometimes I just don't have the energy to clean everything up. Jennifer smiled. At that moment, she realized that the elderly lady had called her not just for cleaning, but also for conversation and to share her feelings. Putting on an apron, Jennifer started cleaning the apartment. She first neatly arranged the books on the shelf, then picked up the magazines, dusted the furniture, and vacuumed the floor. She tried to be careful not to damage any valuable old books. The hostess watched her with a smile. The elderly woman was very pleased to have found such a caring and kind cleaner. When Jennifer finished, Angelina Boyer surveyed the apartment, which now sparkled with cleanliness like a new coin. Deep down, Jennifer was also pleased with her work, knowing that the elderly lady would be happy living in such order. Thank you, Jennifer, said Angelina Boyer. I'm glad I could help. Call me again if you need anything, Jennifer replied. The hostess smiled and showed her to the door. Jennifer left feeling uplifted. She was confident that she had finally found her place in life, where she could help people and make their lives more comfortable. In the following days, Jennifer worked on similar assignments, and she enjoyed all of them. Besides improving her financial situation, she met people each with their own stories. The week flew by, and then came another call. Jennifer answered the phone almost automatically. Fatigue was beginning to set in, but the thought an assignment means extra income kept her alert. Yes, she answered. Jennifer, my name is Frank. A few days ago we talked about cleaning a house on Main Street, came a smooth voice with a slight foreign accent. Yes, I remember. When would be convenient for you? Jennifer replied, trying to shake off the fog of drowsiness. How about today? Could you come around 4 o'clock? I want to get the house in order before a possible sale, suggested Frank. Of course, no problem. Just let me know if there's a lot of work, Jennifer said. Well, not too much. It just needs to be cleaned well. I don't want to do it myself, you know? Too many memories tied to this house, replied the caller, his voice tinged with sadness. I understand. I'll be there at 4, Jennifer concluded. All right, I'll be waiting for you. She hung up and closed her eyes, but didn't fall asleep. Her mind raced with thoughts and images, painting a picture of a large, dusty house filled with furniture that only exuded sadness. She was eager to get there, see the place with her own eyes, and feel the atmosphere of silent sorrow that seemed to envelop everything. At exactly 4 o'clock, Jennifer stood at the door with buckets, rags, and cleaning supplies. Deep down, she felt like she wasn't just a cleaner, but a kind of magician who was supposed to transform this house into a bright and clean castle. Hello. Jennifer snapped out of her thoughts when she saw Frank. He stood on the doorstep in a sandy-colored shirt and dark trousers. The deep sadness in his blue eyes was evident. Hello, come in. Here are the keys, Frank said, handing them to her and letting her into the house. Jennifer cautiously stepped over the threshold and was astonished. Inside, the house seemed enormous, much larger than it looked from the outside. High ceilings, large windows, and everything in light tones. But the house lacked the most important thing, signs of life. Only dust settled on the furniture and dirty window panes. This is my late wife's house. Sharon passed away a little over a year ago. The house was robbed and all the valuables were taken while I was on an overseas business trip. Jennifer sighed sympathetically, unsure what else to say. Sharon loved this house very much. She chose the furniture, the paintings, Frank continued, as if reading Jennifer's thoughts. He then approached a large painting hanging above the fireplace and gently traced his finger along the frame. This is her favorite. A sunset over the sea, he said softly. Jennifer nodded and quietly asked, What should I clean first? Frank sighed sadly. Just clean everything, but don't touch the photographs and the wardrobe in the bedroom. All right. And what should be done with your wife's things? Jennifer asked cautiously. The owner shrugged. I don't know. Perhaps it's best to move them somewhere, but not today, please. Jennifer understood that she needed to clean up without disturbing the woman's belongings. She took up the mop and, raising it like a sword, said with determination, Well, let's begin. Jennifer worked quickly and confidently. She dusted, washed the floors, and scrubbed stains from the carpets. It felt to her like she was not just removing dust and dirt, but also the negative energy that seemed to shroud the house like a shroud. Frank walked around the house, glancing at her work but speaking little. At that moment, he seemed to be in his own world, a world of memories of his wife, who had been a victim of the robbery. Jennifer understood his feelings. She had recently lost her husband, and so she knew how difficult such times could be. You know, I think Sharon must have been a very hospitable hostess, Jennifer said during a break. Frank smiled, but the smile was sad and somber. Yes, she was a wonderful person, kind, easy to talk to, caring. Jennifer fell silent, unsure how to comfort this calm, melancholic man. At that moment, she felt a strong urge to say something kind, something that might help ease the pain of loss. But she also knew that no words could replace the one who had passed away. I've been through something similar myself. I know it's a very hard loss, she whispered. Yes, it is. But life goes on, Frank replied. Jennifer nodded and, setting aside the bucket and rag, took up the vacuum cleaner. We have to move forward. Frank gave a strained smile, and in that display of politeness, a whole range of emotions could be read: sorrow for the loss, a will to live, and hope for the future. Jennifer continued her work, remembering that she was not just a cleaner but a fairy of cleanliness who was there to help Frank cope with his pain. By evening, the house was clean. She had tidied up everything she could, avoiding the photographs and the wardrobe in the bedroom, although the photos depicted the late owner, and the wardrobe held her dresses. In general, there was nothing particularly special. Frank inspected the house and remarked admiringly, Thank you, you did a very big and good job. It was nothing. I'm glad I could help, Jennifer replied. Don't be modest. It's bright again here, Frank countered and walked her to the door. As they were parting, he said, "Thank you again. I'll call you in a few days. Maybe we can go somewhere? Have a coffee? Consider it my tip for a quality cleaning." "All right. I don't mind," Jennifer said, and left. As soon as she stepped outside, it felt like she had transitioned from one world to another, from a land of sorrow to a world of joyful dreams. Smiling, Jennifer headed home to her children, knowing she had people to protect, love, and cherish. Yet, deep down, there remained a vague sense of unfinished business. Jennifer understood that her acquaintance with Frank was not over. She felt that her life had changed in some way that evening. Maybe subtly, but still. And that meant her paths with Frank would intersect again. Jennifer walked down the street, breathing in the fresh evening air. Thoughts of her encounter with the strange client lingered. She recalled Frank, his sad eyes, and his touching words about his late wife. On her way home, Jennifer stopped by a store to buy groceries for dinner. The place was crowded, with people rushing around and chatting. Jennifer grabbed a basket and went through the aisles, selecting groceries. Almost automatically, like any mother, she added potatoes, carrots, onions, meat, bread, and milk to her basket. Soon, she noticed an elderly woman standing by the candy shelves, sighing heavily. "Is something wrong? Are you looking for something?" Jennifer asked cautiously. The stranger managed a weary smile. "I'm looking for candy for my son. He used to love these caramel ones. But now they've gotten so expensive. I don't have enough money." Jennifer looked at the shelf and saw that the price tag had indeed been changed to a new one. "Take them. I'll pay." "It's no trouble," she said with a trembling voice. Tears welled up in the elderly woman's eyes. "Thank you, dear. My son will only be able to try these candies in the afterlife. He's been gone for 3 years now. I wanted to bring them to the cemetery for the anniversary tomorrow." A tear slowly rolled down Jennifer's cheek. After paying for the elderly woman's purchase, she stepped aside to collect herself. At that moment, Jennifer realized she was not alone in her struggles with life's hardships. Everyone has their own problems, sorrows, and joys. But the thought of Frank still occupied her mind. Why had he caught her attention so much? It was a mystery. She came home and found the children having dinner. They were making noise, talking loudly, and laughing infectiously. Jennifer put her bag on the table and looked at their meal with love. "Hi. Here I am. Mom, Mommy," the children shouted joyfully and rushed to hug her. Jennifer hugged them and immediately noticed that Albert was looking down sadly. "What's wrong, buddy? Are you upset about something?" she asked immediately. Albert looked at his mother with sad eyes. "A little. I'm having problems with math at school. The teacher says I need extra help." Jennifer smiled. "It's no big deal. We'll sort it out for sure. Don't worry." "Thanks. The kids at school are already laughing at me," her son replied with feeling. "That's all right. We'll improve together. I still remember some of the school curriculum," said Mom. The next morning, taking advantage of the weekend, she began to put her plan into action. She got out a textbook and started explaining equations to Albert, while also explaining the same to his brother Alfred. At first, the boys didn't grasp her teachings well, but as Jennifer got into her groove and started using jokes and funny scenarios, things improved. Soon, the twins were racing to solve problems, trying to see who was better at it. The kids calmed down only in the evening when they had thoroughly understood the material. Jennifer was about to head to the bathroom when the phone rang. To her great surprise, it was Frank calling, inviting her to go outdoors the next day. "What's the plan?" "We'll go boating on the lake, get some fresh air, and unwind." "Well, I don't know. I have the kids, and I won't be taking them outdoors because I'm afraid of ticks. And Lucy has allergies to flowers. It's hard to tell which ones." Jennifer hesitated. but Frank managed to persuade her and eventually got her to agree to go to the lake. He was skilled at negotiations, after all. The weather was absolutely beautiful. Jennifer, leaning back against the warm wooden backrest of the boat, smiled at Frank, who was sitting opposite and rowing smoothly through the water. "Just don't catch a cold." "The wind is chilly," he said, looking at Jennifer with concern. "I'm used to it," she brushed it off, but still pulled on a thin sweater. "Our family is tough." At that moment, she thought about her children at home. Albert was sleeping peacefully. Layla and Lucy, holding hands tightly, were already making plans for the next day, and Alfred was watching TV. "You know, Jennifer, you're a very strong woman. I still can't get used to the idea that you handle everything on your own," Frank said, but his tone was more sad than admiring. She shrugged. "It's nothing, you get used to it. Life is like that. It always brings surprises. Mostly unpleasant, but sometimes good ones. Like today, for instance." Frank nodded but didn't reply. His gaze was directed at the shore, where, as if playing hide and seek, a church of the suburban village was hidden behind trees. "You know, my Sharon loved this little church very much," he suddenly said, breaking the prolonged silence. Jennifer felt her heart tighten with sympathy. Sharon seemed to her like a beam of light after long twilight. Mentally, Jennifer pictured her, beautiful, well-groomed, sitting in the boat where she was now, with a cup of tea from a camping thermos. "Were you very happy with her?" Jennifer asked quietly, trying to keep envy out of her voice. "It's hard to say. My business is mostly overseas, and I was often away on business trips. Sharon was left alone. That's when the robbers took advantage. They broke into the safe, took all the cash, and pushed Sharon down the stairs. She didn't even have time to feel anything. I could only come for the funeral. The coffin was closed, as you understand. At the time of the robbery, a maid was also in the house, but after all that happened, she disappeared without a trace. They searched and searched, but to no avail," Frank replied, and there was a hint of sadness in his voice. Jennifer sighed and didn't want to continue this unpleasant conversation. The boat, gently rocking on the waves, turned into a small bay. The sun had already set below the horizon, but its reflection still painted the sky in bright colors. Suddenly, in the silence, about 10 meters behind the boat, a splash was heard. Jennifer involuntarily flinched, and Frank quickly turned toward the source of the sound. "What was that?" "I don't know," Jennifer replied, peering intently at the water. At that moment, in the reddish glow of the sunset on the water, she saw something dark floating a few meters from the boat. At the same time, the sound of someone's rapidly retreating footsteps was heard. "There's someone there," Jennifer whispered fearfully. Frank quickly turned the boat and rowed toward the spot where they had seen the dark object. With each stroke of the oars, the mysterious object became clearer. Jennifer looked more closely and immediately heard a soft, plaintive whimper that turned into a whine. "It's a puppy," she whispered, horrified not just by the sight of the animal but by the thought that some fiend might have thrown it into the water. Frank quickly reached the puppy and, before Jennifer could do anything, had already pulled it out of the water. The puppy, wet and shivering, immediately clambered onto Frank's lap and snuggled against him with its fragile little body. "Poor thing," Jennifer said, gently stroking the puppy's head. "It's very cold." "Yes, we need to warm it up quickly," Frank agreed. He placed the foundling on his lap and wrapped it in his sweater. The puppy immediately stopped whining, burying its nose in the warm fabric. "Do you think someone threw it away?" Jennifer asked, unable to take her eyes off the puppy. "I don't know. Maybe some kids were playing and accidentally dropped it. Or maybe someone just wanted to get rid of it," Frank replied. Jennifer nodded. Her mind was racing with different thoughts. In a small village where everyone knew each other and nobody was a stranger, such an act seemed inconceivable. "We should try to find its owners." "What if it just ran away or got lost?" Jennifer suggested. "Yes," Frank agreed, "but how?" Jennifer thought for a few seconds and then timidly suggested, Maybe we should keep it with us? You're at home all the time. I can try to talk to people in the village. Great idea. Although, there's no need to go to the village. I'd be happy to take in the puppy for a while. It's such a sweet thing. I'll name it Mickey, Frank said. Jennifer smiled. She was glad that Frank would give the puppy a new home. She also felt that this could be a good start to their relationship. And he's already warmed up a bit, she said, touching the puppy's ear. Yes, Mickey is a good boy. And you are too, Frank said with a smile, which once again made Jennifer blush. I actually love animals, she murmured softly. I understand. I had a puppy when I was a child. It was still a baby when it was hit by a car, Frank said sadly. Jennifer involuntarily flinched. She knew how painful it was to lose beloved pets, as they inevitably become part of the family. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. Oh, no, don't worry. It's all right. I've already gotten over it, Frank said, picking up the oars again. The boat glided smoothly on the water. Jennifer looked at the sunset and thought about her own things. Do you often come here to row? She asked Frank. When I have time, quite often. I like it here. It's quiet and peaceful. At that moment, Jennifer felt the same thing she had felt the day she first saw Frank at the late wife's house. Her heart raced, her cheeks flushed, and hope sparkled in her eyes. Jennifer took a deep breath, enjoying the silence. The sun was already setting, which meant their outing was coming to an end. Birds were singing in her soul, and an imaginary rainbow shone in the sky instead of the sunset's glow. Since they lived in different parts of town, Jennifer convinced Frank not to walk her home. It's not far, no need to worry. And the neighborhood is quiet. Frank initially resisted but then agreed and gave her a peck on the cheek as a farewell. Jennifer walked down the sidewalk, floating on air like a fairy tale character. Suddenly, she distinctly felt someone's presence behind her. She stopped and quickly turned around. No one was there. It must be my imagination, she thought, and continued walking. But the feeling of unease still lingered. Looking around frequently, Jennifer stubbornly tried to find the source of her anxiety. It's nothing to worry about. Everything's fine, she whispered to herself, trying to calm down and catch her breath. But her maternal instinct told her that someone was indeed watching her. Despite stopping and looking around several times on her way home, no one was there. Maybe I'm developing paranoia, she thought anxiously. The unpleasant feeling wouldn't leave her, making her feel like a hunted rabbit. At her front door, Jennifer looked back once again and saw a woman with long dark hair who quickly ducked behind a post near the trash bins. Jennifer's heart raced. Should she call the police? What would she say? That she was being followed by a shadow? It seemed ridiculous. At that moment, she decided to consult Frank on the phone. Frank, sorry to bother you again, but I wanted to ask. Do you know if there's a woman who might be following me? A woman? What do you mean? Are you serious? Frank asked. Yes, seriously. I feel like someone is following me, and I even saw her. She's a woman about 30 years old, maybe older, I don't know. But I really don't like it, Jennifer exclaimed. You seem tired. Just take a rest, and everything will be fine. I don't know. Maybe what's happening is somehow related to your wife. Jennifer suggested. Sharon? Are you kidding? Don't make things up. I assure you, Sharon has been dead for a long time, and her body rests in the city cemetery, Frank replied, unable to hide his irritation. Jennifer shook her head. Maybe you're right. But something tells me otherwise. There was a steely note in Frank's voice. Jennifer, we need to do something about this. I honestly don't know how to help you. But you need to calm down, that's for sure. Maybe you should see a psychologist? It might be a nervous breakdown. Tears welled up in Jennifer's eyes. All right, she said and hung up. At that moment, she decided to go to her room and look out the window onto the street. But of course, there was no one there. Jennifer sighed with relief and was about to pull away from the window when she saw a figure on the opposite side. It was a woman. She stood there, openly watching her. Jennifer gasped in shock. The stranger smiled. It looked like Sharon. Jennifer instinctively recoiled and drew the curtains. "No, this just can't be. This is all unreal," she whispered, afraid to look out the window again. After taking a shower, Jennifer calmed down a bit and, after putting the kids to bed, locked herself in her room. The night was restless as Jennifer barely slept, thinking about what had happened. Morning brought new troubles, familiar to all mothers. "Mom, what's for lunch today?" Layla's cheerful voice rang out. The little one, an eternal optimist, was constantly underfoot, always ready for adventures. "Potatoes with meatballs," the mother replied, trying to hide how tired she was. Each day it became harder to hide how difficult it was for her. Cleaning apartments and houses in constant haste, not giving herself time for her own life. And now this strange surveillance. "Will there be ice cream?" Layla continued persistently. "Oh, of course. How could we do without ice cream?" Jennifer smiled. She herself wanted ice cream, but she knew she couldn't afford everything. Deciding to quickly go to the store, Jennifer took her bag and quietly closed the door behind her. The streets were sparsely populated at that time, and she felt comfortable. It meant there would be fewer shoppers in the store. She could get everything she needed quickly and return home. At that moment, a black SUV stopped about 50 meters up the street. A woman in a dark dress and high heels got out. She was tall, thin, with dark hair gathered in a bun. She wore black sunglasses that hid her eyes. Jennifer took a few steps and froze in astonishment. She immediately recognized her. It was Sharon, Frank's wife, whose house she had cleaned a week ago. Jennifer remembered her photograph in a black frame above the fireplace in the living room. "Oh God, could it really be her?" flashed through the young cleaner's mind. Sharon walked slowly towards her, her head down. Jennifer backed away, unwilling to meet her gaze. She had never seen Sharon in person and now couldn't believe her eyes. "Don't be afraid, I don't want to scare you," Sharon said, stopping in front of Jennifer. "It's okay," Jennifer replied. "I just want to ask. You're a cleaner, right?" Sharon inquired. "Yes, I clean on request," Jennifer answered. "And you cleaned Frank's house?" Sharon asked again. "Yes," Jennifer replied, feeling her palms sweat. Sharon smirked. "Can you tell me what's going on with him?" "Going on?" Jennifer repeated, not understanding. "Yes, exactly. I want to know what he's doing and who he's spending time with. I want to know what this fool's life is like." "But I don't know anything," Jennifer answered timidly. "Do you think I'm a fool? You cleaned his house, so you must have seen everything. I have a right to know." I can't," Jennifer said, feeling helpless. "Do you pity him? Or do you think he deserves sympathy? You don't even know him." "I don't think anything," Jennifer said, no longer able to hold her gaze. "Please leave," she asked a bit later, unable to endure the conversation any longer. "Then at least look at this," Sharon snapped, pulling a photograph from her bag and thrusting it into Jennifer's hand. Jennifer took the photo with trepidation. It was a picture of Sharon, just like the one in Frank's house, but in this photo, Sharon wasn't alone, she was with her sister, who looked exactly like her. "Go away, I don't believe it." "It must be a photo montage," Jennifer whispered, handing back the photo and turning her gaze away. Sharon smirked and slowly walked away. She stopped a few steps away, glanced at Jennifer with disdain, and headed toward her car. Jennifer remained alone, contemplating the photograph of the two twins. At that moment, she still couldn't believe what had just happened, nor could she believe that Sharon was alive. After buying groceries almost at random, Jennifer walked slowly home, dragging her feet. That day, Frank personally took her to the doctor. The doctor listened to the confusing story and then, smiling, said, "Jennifer, you've been very distressed by your husband's death and then worried about Frank. You should take a rest and take some sedatives. Come back for a checkup in a week. You'll see, everything will get better." Jennifer left the office feeling broken. She didn't want to believe that what she had seen was just a figment of her imagination. "Well, that's better. You've just worked yourself up too much," Frank said with a smile. She spent the next few hours in anxiety and nervousness. Jennifer anxiously looked around, always expecting to see Sharon or her sister. Frank regarded this with due leniency. Listening sympathetically to her confused explanations, he thought that the woman had experienced a mental breakdown due to associating herself with his deceased wife. Jennifer tried hard to convince her beloved that she had indeed seen Sharon. But on the other hand, she had no proof of her claims. Sharon's doppelganger had approached her on a nearly deserted street, showed her a photograph, and then vanished in an unknown direction. Maybe it was just a vision? Although, Frank could have believed it. What if Sharon really had a sister? Jennifer pondered. She didn't know the answer to this question, as the whole situation had exhausted her. She decided to take a couple of days off work. What else could she do when Frank didn't believe a word she said? Of course, Jennifer understood that the businessman was trying to do what was best. He wanted to shield her from shocks. But it had little effect. Even her attempts to learn details about Frank's married life with Sharon met with a wall of misunderstanding. "What do you want from me, Jennifer?" "I've already said everything. Sharon and I were married for a short time. I spent most of the time abroad. It was more convenient for everyone, you see? She was the keeper of the hearth and looked after the house, while I earned money and made deals," he explained once again. Jennifer looked at Frank with longing. Listen, what if Sharon really had someone? A blood or a cousin sister? I definitely saw that photograph, and in it, Sharon was standing next to her double. It's unlikely it was a montage, you understand? Frank shook his head sadly. Well, I'll try to find out. But I don't think it will yield results. Actually, Sharon rarely spoke about her past. There were rumors that she had been in some sort of boarding school or orphanage. Anyway, I didn't really look into it. We had a modest wedding. There were almost no guests from her side, and none of my relatives came here. At the mention of an orphanage or boarding school, Jennifer noticeably tensed. At that moment, she realized that the mystery of Sharon might lie in this fact. Honestly, everything seemed very strange. To marry a foreigner and accept the constant separation caused by her husband's travels. It did look quite suspicious. Determined to find out everything for herself, Jennifer secretly went to the very boarding school where Sharon Brooks was allegedly raised the next day, without informing Frank. Unfortunately, she faced her first setback there. As the director explained, the archives had burned down a few years ago, and with them, all information about the students, especially those who had left several years ago, was lost. Since the management had changed a long time ago, no one knew Sharon Brooks personally. Jennifer was about to leave empty-handed when the director stopped her at the door and quietly added, Listen, I think you should talk to Ernest Campbell. He's worked here as a janitor for almost as long as the school has been open. So, speak with him. Maybe he knows something." Jennifer shrugged uncertainly, then thanked the director for his help. She found Ernest Campbell almost immediately. The bent, elderly man was sweeping the yard with the meticulousness characteristic of older people. It's the young ones who are always in a rush and do everything just to get it done. Not all of them, of course, but a certain percentage of such people does exist. When Ernest Campbell learned what the guest was interested in, he pondered for a moment. His face darkened and was covered with wrinkles. Frowning, he hesitated a bit and then said, "You know what? Before asking about Sharon Brooks, you'd better ask about her sister Ada. They were twins, indistinguishable from each other. But their personalities were different. Sharon was a real troublemaker, always up to mischief. Ada, on the other hand, was a girl with principles. She studied well. In general, she was the complete opposite of her sister. Jennifer was taken aback with surprise. "Ernest Campbell, are you sure? Things might have been different. So much time has passed." He smirked. "You know, dear, people start mixing things up when dementia sets in, but my mind is still sharp. So I'll tell you this, I wouldn't be surprised if Sharon Brooks got her sister into some kind of trouble." Jennifer shuddered and then asked, "And if needed, could you confirm your words? For the police or for my husband, who will come asking questions?" The elderly janitor smirked. "Don't doubt it. I can testify under oath if necessary. I'm curious myself about what happened with Sharon Brooks. I have a feeling she must have gotten herself into some situation and dragged her sister along with her." Struggling to contain her excitement, Jennifer took out her phone and dialed Frank's number. At first, he reacted to her words with considerable irony. "Oh, you're fantasizing again? The doctor told you it's a result of a mental disorder. We've both been through it. You lost your husband, I lost my wife. That's what has affected your health." Jennifer patiently listened to the skeptical remarks and then, with a determined look, handed the phone to Ernest Campbell, explaining what he needed to say. This was when Frank's surprise set in. He least expected to hear what the elderly janitor revealed. It sounded so unreal that Frank could hardly believe his ears. The businessman felt like he should pinch himself to make it all disappear like a bad dream. But no matter how much he did it, Ernest Campbell's measured, slightly hoarse voice still sounded in the receiver. That was when the businessman realized that 3 years ago, Sharon had simply deceived him. Most likely, Sharon had persuaded her more compliant and intelligent sister, Ada, to play the role of bait, so that a rich businessman would fall for one of them. But since it wasn't easy to meet the real Sharon, it was quite expected that Frank fell for Ada. As it turned out during the subsequent investigation, Sharon had completely overshadowed her submissive sister and, posing as the wealthy foreign businessman, shamelessly enjoyed the wealth that came their way. While Ada patiently waited for her husband's return from a foreign business trip, Sharon was spending his money on restaurants, nightclubs, and shops. The most interesting thing was that Sharon was not actually in a relationship with Frank. At some point, they simply exchanged documents to live each other's lives. Essentially, they tangled everything up so that the mess became a dead weight. Initially, Ada didn't understand why her sister acted that way. Everything became clear much later, when Sharon decided to frame Ada and organized a fake robbery at Frank's house. She found the right people and showed them where the safe with money and valuable documents was located. However, during the attack, Sharon's overly zealous accomplices miscalculated their strength and roughly pushed Ada, who was unsuspecting at that moment. The fall from the stairs proved fatal. Thus, without intending to, Sharon effectively killed herself. Not literally, but on paper. Now, to everyone, Sharon Brooks was dead, and instead, Ada Brooks lived secretly, known to few because of the burnt archive of the boarding school. Only with the help of the elderly janitor, whose memory remained as sharp as in his youth, was it possible to trace Sharon. The only thing Frank couldn't understand for a long time was why Sharon was stalking him and tormenting him, driving Jennifer to despair. But this, too, had its explanation. It was all due to basic jealousy. Seeing that her late sister's husband was living comfortably and had even found a new partner, Sharon couldn't resist adding her own bit of bitterness to their relationship. That's when she started following Jennifer, enjoying the fact that the poor woman thought she was seeing the ghost of the deceased Sharon. In reality, everything was much simpler. There were no signs at all, only Sharon, who, driven by greed, didn't spare even her own sister. All this was revealed not immediately, but only after Frank hired 2 private detectives who started investigating from different angles. About a week later, the private detectives crossed paths and realized they were looking for the same person. When Ada, aka Sharon Brooks, was finally arrested, she genuinely regretted having shown Jennifer that photograph of the twin sisters. Had the fraudster not done that, she would have remained just a ghost of the deceased wife to Jennifer and Frank. During the interrogation, Sharon admitted that she intended to drive Frank insane in the future to take the rest of his money. For some reason, deep down, she still blamed the businessman for her sister's death, as if Frank had planned to rob himself and push his wife down the stairs. Even seasoned criminal investigators had to admit that Sharon Brooks was a masterful criminal. By committing crimes through others, she managed not only to appropriate Frank's money but also lived comfortably all this time, enjoying the fact that the unfortunate husband suffered from the loss of his wife. Sharon only visited Ada's grave once, when Ada appeared to her in a dream. Sharon didn't believe in mysticism but felt that Ada wanted to give her some kind of sign, though she never understood what it was. She only realized this while sitting in the detention center, where she was charged with organizing the robbery and the involuntary murder of her own sister. About 2 days later, Sharon's accomplices were arrested. Many of them had moved to other cities and felt safe, thinking they had pulled off the heist of the century. But as is known, punishment inevitably catches up with those who have broken the law even once. And Jennifer could finally breathe a sigh of relief, as she had not understood what was really happening to her all this time. After Sharon's arrest, Frank publicly apologized to Jennifer and then handed her a velvet-lined box. "Marry me. And I'm sorry for being such a fool," the businessman said with a trembling voice. Jennifer smiled, then agreed and kissed Frank. At that moment, she knew their life together would be long and happy, having already endured such severe trials at the start of their relationship. This meant their future would be happy and cloudless, just as she had dreamed for so many years. As if to support his owner, Mickey barked loudly and began licking Frank's hand. Frank smiled, embraced Jennifer, and gave a kind look to her 4 children. A month later, they had their wedding, where Alfred, Layla, Lucy, and Albert surrounded their mother in their festive outfits and began dancing around her. Tears shimmered in Jennifer's eyes as she thought that perhaps her former husband was watching over her from the heavens and mentally blessing her for a long, happy life.